Fredrick, very good to have you on here, sir. Thank you very much.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me, Jacob. You can
Yeah,
just call me James, by the way.
James, Fredrick. Yeah, so
Yeah.
let me ask you this. Most people when they come up to you, do they say James, do they say Fredrick, and what do you prefer?
Most of them call me early, and they don't realize that that was created in a lab. You know.
Lab
Um,
grown.
yeah, but no, I used to go by Jay. I had like a nickname when I was really young, and then I went to a I went to a different. I graduated from a different school like really late in my high school career. Feels weird to call it a high school career,
Yeah,
but
but no, but it is. It's a 4 year
yeah,
career. Yeah.
but so I started going by James because I was like, I really want to be called James. But Frederick, that was always what you got called the first day of school, and it was like everybody around was like, "What? What's his name? What a nerd!"
And then you gotta correct that, right? It's James. It's James.
Yeah,
So I appreciate you taking the time to correct me now. So James, but either way, very good to have you on here, sir.
man,
I'm glad
good
that
to
we
be
could.
here.
Hey, I will pay you for your endorsement later on. Um, yeah, just kind of starting way back here. Where did your initial interest in music stem from? Do you recall what kind of got you interested in it?
Um, I remember, like this is a weird first memory, but I remember, uh, hearing "Toxic" by Britney Spears and really thinking the guitar sounded cool in that song when that was like what my sister listened to, and I listened to it too. I'm not gonna act like it was her whole thing, and I was forced into it. I still think "Toxic" rules. It's that we're actually covering that song on this tour. Um, No, I really do remember just being because when you think about it, that's just surf guitar, which would eventually become a big, foundation of what I think is cool about the instrument. And I I remember getting obsessed with Hank Williams Sr. pretty early on, and like YouTube had just come out, and I was like, uh, I would just do that song and There's a Tear in My Beer on repeat. I would just sing those at my computer screen, and my sister would just scream at me. To She's like, there are he has other songs. Learn those. But and then I my one of my best friends in high school, he played guitar and I would play his guitar when I would go over. His name's Joe Bradley, and he had a Telecaster and like a shitty classical guitar, and I would play those in his treehouse. And so that's probably why I still am into the Telecaster. But I eventually got a guitar when I had to beg for one like two. I asked for it for my birthday or for Christmas like 2 years in a row. I finally got it on my fifth on. Let's see, I was 15.
Hey, we're back. There you are.
My cameraman locked his knees. It's an amateur move. He
Yeah, I
has.
know, and you work with non-union guys.
Have you ever seen those YouTube videos where those folks lock their legs when they're standing and they pass out because they don't know? You know,
Yeah,
your legs, you like block off circulation.
circulation.
It's pretty funny.
I
Anyways,
still I still don't understand how that happens,
you have to be extremely unathletic for it to happen, but
and that just doesn't happen for us because we are
yeah,
athletes,
we
you
are
and
at
I.
you know we are at our peak. But
But we constantly live in the peak. That's
yeah.
that's the thing. It's not going away. We were just born into it, and that's how we're just gonna go out in the peak.
You're a knee locker. I can tell you're locking your knees right now, actually.
All right, okay, all right. Anyways, moving on. Yeah, not 10 minutes into this thing, already getting accusations of knee locking, and I thought I beat them. I did a whole press tour about how I don't do it, and it rears its head again. You just cannot shake it.
Yeah.
Nor the knee either, because it's of course locked. Uh, but I did read that you eventually got the guitar at 16, right? This is around the time that this is
I,
happening for you?
I was 15 and a half.
Okay. Oh, all right. And we're not rounding up. We're pretty precise on this podcast here. So 15 and a half. Um, yeah, did you already have a at least cursory knowledge of how to get some sound out of it because of playing in the treehouse beforehand?
Not really. I would mainly play the guitar when like Joe wasn't there. So like there was no version of me that was trying to get any kind of guidance. I was just like, almost like it was like cookies that I was trying to keep from my mom. I was like, I just wanted to go touch it when I was like 12 and 13. And then the first trick I learned, my dad actually taught me. My dad has one arm. He lost his right arm in a traffic accident in his like 20s. And don't worry, it's gonna get funny.
It's gonna take a turn. I know it. Yeah.
But no, this is kind of funny. He with his left hand, he was like play the high E, and then he took his hand and did the Joker lick. Wow,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah, it's Steve
So
Miller. Yeah.
I still do that to this day. When you run out of ideas during a solo, just go ahead and do that, and it usually goes over pretty well.
That's a
So
crowd pleaser for sure.
he's not dead.
Steve Miller or your father?
Space Cowboy, yeah.
Going back to your influences, was your father introducing you to Hank Williams, or was it something that you just kind of took on yourself and it was just kind of a you were into that?
I really don't remember. Like my dad certainly liked him, but I don't remember if I heard it. Because I remember like certain things that my uncle, my uncle JW showed me Johnny Cash on a fishing trip on the Alabama River, and it was in Camden, Alabama, and he had his like CD collection. That was when LimeWire was a thing, and my mom had burned him every Johnny Cash song and given it to him as a gift. He probably thought she had spent like $1,000 on all these CDs. But I remember hearing Johnny Cash that was around the same time, and I remember I switched from Whitey Tidies to Boxers on that weekend. I really grew up. I heard
That,
Johnny. I'm not joking. I was like, it's time. It's
it's a
time to
big move. It's a
switch.
big move.
um, but with Hank, I really don't know. Like there's like a weird tie-in with the Williams family and my family. I'm from kind of the same part, and my grandparents they would have like run-ins, and my grandmother would go see Hank play. And
Wow.
apparently, my grandfather, I don't. It's not super well documented, but Hank and I can't remember her name. His wife. Oh, man. Anyways,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
swingers. They,
Swingers.
yeah, and you know, um, not super well documented, but I mean, Hank was touring all the time, and but anyways, my grandmother was like a very prideful person, so the fact that she even super fire and brimstone Southern Baptist, and she would tell me the story about um, Hank's wife picking my granddad up in a yellow Cadillac and how jealous she would be. My granddad was probably like 20. I don't know. It's a different time. It was
Right.
the late 40s,
Hmm.
early 50s, and they were courting. Um, but no, that is kind of a weird story. I tried to tell that story at the Hank Williams Museum, which is the staff is like Williams family.
Oh, they're not having that.
No, they're like get out. But yeah, I don't remember, but I just remember being obsessed with Hank immediately.
Yeah.
Um,
Is there another song from his catalog that sticks out to you aside from "There's a Tear in My Beer"?
those were I don't know why those were the first two. Um, because I wasn't aware he was from Alabama when I first heard it. You know, I was 11 or 12, and I it's because I thought the pedal steel when I heard the lap steel. It wasn't pedal steel yet, lap steel, and I thought that Hank Williams was from Hawaii. Like, and that what you know that's where the lap steel kind of got famous was Hawaii. But I definitely pretty much the whole catalog. I would say there's not a whole lot. I don't know. He's got that Hank the Drifter, or he's I just bought this one album of his that he did where he's doing like a character actor, and he is just like it's spoken word gospel things, and he's just like witnessing. And there's it's almost like if you've ever heard like the ink spots.
No, I'm not familiar with him.
In that song, I don't want to set the world on fire. I
Okay.
don't want to set the world on
Oh.
fire.
Mhm.
Like all of the ink spot songs, there's like it was four dudes. One of them had a really high falsetto, and like one guitar player, and then at some point the dude would come in with a really low voice and just repeat the words to the song in a really low, just talk, sing. And it was almost like that, like Hank was doing that. I don't know if that was like I mean, ink spots are in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Uh, that's ink spots is like 30s, 40s. It's like super early stuff, but
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I'm not super. I'll listen to it, but those are probably my least favorite Hank songs. But almost all of them rule.
Yeah, for sure. Real quick, going back to this fishing trip here. Are you still a boxers man, or have you
I'm a freak.
changed? Okay, I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah,
Um,
which is that kind of just a hybrid?
it
Yeah,
is, and a lot of people rock the briefs. I'm not one of those people. I switched to boxers, and I just been on boxers.
I was whitey tighties. Well, I came into the world naked. I do want that to be clear.
That is
Um,
on record. Yeah.
I started with nothing, and then briefs, well, diapers for a while there, but then whitey tighties, boxers, fully crossed the bridge. Then I came back halfway across the bridge, and I live there, right there in the middle of the bridge now.
You think that there's gonna be another turning point, or is this it?
I'll probably jump off the bridge at some point. I don't
Why
know
not?
what's below the bridge, but we'll find out.
Commando.
Swim trunks.
Just exclusively, or just like the netting, get some netting in all the trousers.
God, yeah, the part you're supposed to cut out.
Yeah, that's oh yeah, I've
People that don't cut that out, y'all need to cut that out.
yeah, yeah, let's do the PSA now because a lot of people aren't talking about this. Yeah, you got to cut that out. That's not supposed to be there, or it shouldn't be there. We'll say that. So you're getting influenced by Britney Spears and Hank Williams and Johnny Cash. Um, and real quick, is there a Johnny Cash song that sticks out to you from that whole catalog?
I think Ring of Fire was like because that was like it's not anything now. You hear it, you're like, cool. But that was like really. Always fascinating to me to go back and learn when something was controversial and we just don't think about it anymore.
Yeah,
Johnny Cash apparently heard trumpets in his dream, and it was more of a biblical thing, or like he was thinking of angels with trumpets. He was like,
yeah.
"This song needs trumpet," and the producer was like, I don't think so." And then he forced him to do it, and um, that I remember that one. I remember, Folsom Prison was. I still play that one. That's like a song that like weirdly gets covered so much. I hate to cover it. You know, like I think it just gets requested so much. But
Sure. Sweet Caroline's in that bracket as well, of course.
Joker was one of the first ones I learned because I was playing like 4 hour bar gigs, and so I just had to learn all these covers, and that was one of the first ones I had to learn. There's a band here in town called Cashback, and they're probably the best like Johnny Cash cover band I've ever heard. And they employ a trumpet player just for that song. He's in all the pictures, which I think is hilarious. Um,
Yeah, come to think of it, there's no more trumpet in any, I
no,
think. Yeah.
not really. They like let him play on a couple other ones, but the the singer, he plays like a cocktail kit standing up and sings, and he makes the guitar player. I've talked to him. He makes him learn all of Luther Perkinson's parts, and they were all wrong. Luther Perkins only played on the E and the A string, and he like the band used to joke like, after a set, or like if it was like the Louisiana Hayride, or um an after party, it would usually go into a jam, and they would be like, Luther, do not jam, do not give away that you don't know how to play guitar, because he was just playing. Like there's literally documented interviews where they and Luther, but you can't deny like that thing that Luther did for his lack of knowledge. People got obsessed with it.
Yeah. Yeah, it went somewhere.
Yeah.
And we can't deny that. So two things. Don't deny that and cut the netting out of the shorts. That's what we've covered so far. So did you eventually get lessons on how to play guitar, or were we kind of self-taught for the most part?
I took a few lessons from a guy named Johnny Barron in Troy, Alabama, and I didn't really like how he taught, because it was like you just had to pick. He was a great player, um, but he had like a book of songs, and he'd be like, do you want to learn these? And I was like, I don't really want to learn songs. I just want to learn how to play guitar. And so I just kind of quit, because it was. And then I eventually tried to take lessons again from him, and he was like, I can't really, like, unless you want to learn us, like, it seems like YouTube. I think he like got to witness his job die, because he was like, oh wow, YouTube, all this free stuff. Um, yeah, some people can learn on YouTube, some people can't. I still think I would greatly. I still to this day would like to take lessons, like in some form, from maybe a jazz person, or
Mm.
some kind of theory. And but yeah, YouTube, and like slowing down songs and learning them. Um, and Joe Bradley helped a lot, just with like, he was like, you only need to learn two scales, and he taught me like the Allman Brothers scale, which is like, I guess, Mixolydian scale. I think I got that right, and minor pentatonic, blues scale. Which essentially Mixolydian is almost just a major pentatonic scale, but yeah, he called him the happy and the sad scale. You got to learn the happy blues, and you got to learn the sad blues.
Yeah.
And that's what they call the blues, and that's what he said. He was wearing a fedora.
Well, I mean that's I would expect nothing less. Uh yeah, did that was blues another huge influence on you early on, or was that something that came kind of later as you started learning guitar?
Um, I got into the blues pretty heavily um through, I think, kind of a funny, um my uncle Bubba, it's his real name.
Real quick, is that the same uncle that was on the fishing trip, or was it a different uncle?
Different uncle. That
Yeah.
was Uncle JW.
Oh yeah, Uncle
Um,
JW. Okay.
uh and then my uncle Bubba, he same, it was a LimeWire situation. And my mom had uh she had asked he had asked her to burn him some James Taylor, and that was around 14. This is before I got the guitar. I was messing around with my buddies, but and I heard Steamroller Blues, which is literally a song making fun of uh white kids coming to Greenwich Village in the 60s, like during that scene. And having all these blues songs and writing, uh like performing and like them lugging around their amps and guitars that their parents had bought them while they're supposed to be like at college. uh Anyways, he was like, they're writing all these heavy songs, and James Taylor just said he like saw right through that scene, and so he was like, I'm just gonna write literally a heavy song. So he was like, I'm a steamroller, but like he was just talking about heavy things, which is really funny because I just thought that song was great, and that was my intro to blues, and then got into Howlin' Wolf and Muddy Waters. Um, um, and then like Black Keys led to. I remember my buddy showed me the Black Keys, and then that led to the Mississippi kind of Junior Kimbrough stuff. Um, I'm trying to think of. I mean, I was pretty upset. I feel like it's like, I don't know. BB King was pretty huge, and then I think John Mayer actually led to a lot of the blues stuff too. I think John Mayer probably led to um like, because my sister's 4 years older, almost five, and like she was listening to the John Mayer trio, and I had never heard like blues rock before. Not, and then I was just mad because it turns out my dad like really, and me and my dad aren't really close, and my dad like didn't have a record player. I remember the only, I guess ZZ Top was a pretty big like, but that's like stadium rock, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, I love ZZ Top, but he only had the greatest hits. He didn't have the. I mean, there's a lot of really cool older stuff, but like all I was hearing was Sharp Dressed Man and Legs, and and those are all great, but very much, they were in their 80s phase by that point. But yeah, and then I just found out he was like a huge Santana fan and a huge Jimi Hendrix fan. Like the first time he came up to Birmingham, we went to a record store and I helped him pick out a bunch of CDs. And I was like, "You like all? Why didn't we listen? Like this would have been great to have heard maybe 10 years sooner." I don't know, but
But it did cross your desk, which is
yeah,
good. Eventually.
yeah.
Yeah, well, speaking on that earlier stuff, do you think that the music that you would be making now would be different if you had picked up the guitar at an earlier age, at like 10 or 11 or 12 or something like that? Do you think that you'd be influenced by the same sounds that you are now, or would it be different?
I don't know. I've thought about that a lot because, um, or and just like throughout the years, like having looking back at opportunities I kind of squandered, like in high school. I play like, the short answer to that is I feel like it'd be very different. But I always wish I had um started younger, but also like there's this weird thing that happens when you're like past your 20s. I think a lot of people, um, like I feel like I've gotten better at a guitar as at guitar in the past like 2 years, just like really focusing on like specifically just playing guitar. Um, and I feel like there was like almost this weird, like if you don't learn it when you're young, you're not going to. And I think that's just because people get really good when they're young and then they coast on it. Like, like I think like thinking of like someone like Eric Clapton or like he got cream good and then he never tried to get past that. He like coasted, he peaked at cream, in my opinion.
Mhm.
I think a lot of people would agree in terms of his, virtuosity on the guitar and just how his tone sounded. Like as soon as he switched from a Gibson to I'm a Telecaster fanatic, but he sounded better on a Gibson. And like started having other people write his songs and play guitar for him because he kind of got in the pop world. But I think that if you just never stop trying to get better, I'm just trying to say that out loud to make myself believe it.
No, good. I mean, hey, and
Not to
this is going to be recorded, so and I'll mark the timestamp for you. Come back and
go back,
listen
weepy
to it.
you.
So you're learning the guitar. Did it kind of come naturally to you as you were teaching yourself on YouTube, or was it still sort of a kind of a headache at times to get your head around it?
I think it was all just like short little battles to get to the inkling of a sound that sounds like the thing you're trying to sound like. So it was just like all these tiny little battles until eventually I saw this I saw this quote the other day that made a lot of sense. It was like I'm going to butcher this. It was just like the scale of mastery and or like proficiency in any skill really is like it starts off with uh, unconscious inadequacy or unconscious ignorance, and event leads to conscious ignorance. Like, oh wow, I really messed that up. To like, and it eventually leads to unconscious mastery. Like you can just play until you don't even have to think anymore. You can
Hmm.
just access all these synapses in your brain. It's not quite muscle memory, but it kind of is. And or it's just like a thing you can access without thinking and
Hmm.
just play with, like how you would, make bebop noises in the car. But yeah, I mean, I think it was just like fighting to sound anything closely resembling what I was listening to, and then but it wasn't easy. I think the only thing that made it easy was like I was too hard headed to do anything else, and I was pretty addicted to it. To this day, I'm just like sometimes I'll just be like, "Wow, I think I've played guitar like." And it's not every day. It's sometimes hard to pick up the guitar. You'll feel defeated after a gig or something. But some days I'll play it for, practice a couple hours and then like at the end of the day pick it up again and I'm like that's crazy. I feel so lucky to have picked a that I'm making a living doing something that I can't not uh
Do in the first place. I know that you moved from Troy to Birmingham, correct?
it was Troy, Luverne, Birmingham, but I mean Luverne is basically Troy. It's like 20 minutes away.
How far is Birmingham from Troy?
Hour and a half, maybe two, depending on traffic.
Did either of your uncles live in Birmingham?
No, no one lived in Birmingham. My sister, my sister moved here, and she was like the first college graduate in our family. So she had moved out here to pursue starting a business, and um, was a graphic designer, and got this job working with like a it's weird. It was like a party planning thing. Like she was, I don't know, it's hard to explain, but yeah, she was like, man, I don't know what to tell you. There's like live music and 20 some odd bars, whereas in Luverne, there's no live music in Luverne unless you count the yearly bluegrass festival in Henderson, which is very cool. I thought it was lame as a kid. I hate that I wasn't, more around uh, the bluegrass culture. I think that I'm very envious of people like, you see some of these people that like didn't even have a choice in the matter, but to become, Billy Strings is an example of someone who like that dude, you know, it was either like bluegrass or heating and refrigerator. I don't know, but
Right, right, right.
that's a Rodney Dangerfield joke.
No, it's good.
I was maybe playing a gig a month if I was lucky in Troy, and so I just moved in with her for a little bit. Got a job at Pet Supplies Plus. Shout out.
Is it still there?
It is.
And is it running well or not as well since you've left?
They didn't know what to do without me.
I've
Uh,
yeah.
they're they're just shaving dogs. I don't know what they're doing. Um,
Were you shaving dogs over there? Or were you stocking shelves or
in the little shaves, not like under the belly. Just they. That's what I got fired for. But no.
yeah, yeah, and you live and you learn.
Actually, I had put in my 2 weeks notice because I had started getting gigs and enough to pay. I was staying in a little tiny studio and was making enough just from the gigs. I was like, I probably should also work this job because it was a very easy company to work for. And they were also like that. My manager would like come to gigs. My manager at the time was only like 35, which I like thought he was old because I was 21, and that was 10 years ago. But he'd come to gigs, and anyways, I was like, I would rather just be kind of broke, but just playing music. So, and I got an offer. It was like I'd opened for this band in Troy called Fire Mountain, and they were uh, they were a big deal to me because they were getting like they did. I just remember being blown away. They're like hometown hero type stuff. They had a day trotter sessions, so
Wow.
they like the watercolor painting, and
Yeah. Those always look so rad too.
yeah,
I never learned who did that, but shout out
yeah,
to whoever did that. There's so many
yeah.
amazing um
I work with
covers.
I work with Sean now, who books in Iowa, but and has the Raccoon Motel in Iowa. But they don't do the day trotter thing. But I eventually got linked up with one of the founders of that. So that was one of those bucket list things that never really got fulfilled. But
Is there anything that would take the place of that or would suffice that now?
uh, Harry from Fire Mountain, he would have to give me his painting and let me burn
Okay.
it.
We will look into that.
Yeah, I'm actually supposed to have lunch today with I guess early dinner with Perry today. He was working in Tuscaloosa, but anyways, um, Perry Perry's first child was being born, and he had to cancel on a gig. And he was going to be opening for John Moreland. And if you don't know John, he's fantastic. And um, so that was like kind of my first like big boy opening slot. Um, where like a songwriter really kicked my ass. Like I played what I thought were songs opening, and then I saw like I got to see, not no offense to Fire Mountain or anything I'd seen before, but that was the first time that I'd seen like someone like Fire Mountain was a great like rock and roll indie rock band, and then I did several runs with Wilder Adkins, who was a great songwriter, great singer, and great guitar player. So it was kind of like you had a lot to latch onto in
Hmm.
both of those instances. But John was like literally just an acoustic guitar, not trying to show off at all, and just hitting you with like songs, just writing lyrics. And he's a great singer too. But um, and so that's how I quit Pets Place Plus. Sorry, that was drawn out.
No, I liked it. We were on a ride, and I appreciate you invited me on there. All right, so you're in Birmingham. You're getting these opportunities. Are you developing early James stuff there, or had that already kind of been in the process of hammering out songs and such before you moved to Birmingham?
I had come up with the name Early James already before I'd moved, and I actually told Perry Brown. I told him that I was like, I think I want to have like a stage name, and he was like, "Don't do it. I wish so badly. This is well into Fire Mountain's career and 2 albums released. He was like, I hate the name Fire Mountain. I wish everyone thinks we're a jam band. Blah blah blah. Like, uh,
Yeah, Fire on the Mountain, sure.
yeah,
Yeah,
and they're like they think that we're a Christian rock band or a jam band. There's no in between. He's like, I just wish I'd gone by my name, which admittedly, Perry Brown, very cool name. He
strong
should
name.
have. He should have. And now he does. Um, I did not think James Mullis was just didn't roll off the tongue like Perry Brown, but and I asked him if I could go as Perry Brown. He would not give me that blessing. But
You asked him, can I just let me use your name.
but I think I had come up with Early James because I was obsessed with Justin Towns Earl at that point, and thought Early was a cool name. Anything other than being myself, that was what I was thinking. I think.
Thought you were gonna say anything else or anything besides being late. That's what I thought you were gonna say there. So that was kind of already in development before getting to Birmingham.
Yeah, and then we had several. I was trying out certain band members, and I remember we were going by Early James and the Late Bloomers for a while, and then Early James and the Smithereens. That was one, and then my old drummer came up with Early James and the Latest, and that was the thing for a while. And then Dan Auerbach said that he wanted to just change it to Early James. Um, and so he won that argument by just saying that out loud one time.
That was a one and done
It was a hard
conversation.
fought battle. Yeah.
Yeah, you push back, he pushed back. Yeah, yeah. So the first release was the self-titled EP. Yes,
Mhm.
and
Well,
how
there were others that I have deleted and tried to erase off the face of the planet. Two two previous releases, um, and a lot of other recorded stuff that never was released. Hopefully, will be released. But yeah, that one was the first one that I was proud of.
and did that fall into the hands of Dan Auerbach before? Or did you give it to him, or did he just come across it?
No, he heard a YouTube video. I don't know what YouTube video, but I had long story short, my old roommate Ryan Saab, uh, who's one of the best songwriters um, doing it right now, but I always joke around and say he moved to Nashville for me because he got me a record. He got a record deal too eventually, but he got a record deal for me first. And it was Katie Pruitt, was buddies and played like a house show at our place in Birmingham, and um, her manager at the time was Clay Bradley. Saab went to Katie Pruitt's show, met Clay Bradley while he was there, showed Clay a YouTube video of me, and Clay had to go meet Dan the next day because at the time he was representing Kendall Marble, who also did a record with Dan. And Dan's son was also named early. He named him after me. He just didn't know it.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
I do wonder if my name had not been Early James, would he have, if he had seen James Mullis, would have been like, I wouldn't
Or
name my son James Mullis. um, but no, and Clay was not my manager at the time. He like literally was messaging me through DMs, and then I like looked up Clay Bradley, and I was like, oh, it's the dude who signed Kenny Chesney. I guess this guy means business. Because at the time, Clay, if you're not, if the listeners are not aware of the Bradley family, Owen Bradley, his grandfather, was essentially like, by definition, what the first producer was. He was Owen Bradley was Patsy Cline's manager, a pretty good piano player, and put together the Nashville A team, which led to like the Nashville number system. A very important family, and Clay was like trying to get out of what Nashville had become, like pop country thing, and he was responsible for a lot of those 90s, early 2000s acts, and he had started this company Eclipse and was trying to find more not pop country acts. And but anyways, met with Dan, and he asked me if I could come up there to meet Dan Auerbach at a studio. I was like, I don't even know who this guy is. It seemed like they were trying to harvest my organs or something.
jury's still out on
And they
that too,
did.
right?
They
Oh,
did.
okay. Okay, so they did. Yeah.
Um,
And we do have pictures of the scars, and we'll put it in a post.
that's why I wear sweaters now.
Right, right.
Um,
But it's a good look though, too.
yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it was like I showed up with my acoustic guitar. I played Dan and Fergie um, a couple songs, and they like offered. I remember Fergie just going off on this tangent about like, to this day, I'm like, that was kind of like I was really young, but not like that. I mean, I was 25, 26, and Fergie just kept going. I was like, you better not be late. I was like, was he trying to make a joke about my name? And I
Or
still
or
don't
or
know.
was it a punctual thing? Well, let me ask you this. I mean, you were right on time for this podcast, but do you find yourself being late for things, or are you pretty
Yeah,
punctual?
I'm late a lot. I don't remember being late to that meeting, but it was just I don't know. I still to this day don't know if he was serious about punctuality because like now at this point, after like being you know decently good friends, cordial acquaintances with a lot of these people, I learn how not um, on time a lot of these people are. So not and but usually these people that are very late are also very well established. So that's probably has something. There's some kind of like to be this late, you have to be this famous.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Punctuality goes out the window as soon as you reach a certain level of celebrity. Um, and I don't know why that is. You would think that you'd be like held higher to a higher standard. It's like you better be here at noon, and
Yeah.
some Joe Schmo could show up at 1:30 or whatever. But
Yeah, I don't get that. I try to I'm better these days than I was when I was younger. He was probably being serious, and I probably was late to the meeting. I'm probably just like, wow, this old guy is lame. Uh, not not nearly aware of David Ferguson's achievements as I should have been at the time. Uh, but yeah,
but you live and you learn and you get there
yeah,
early. Yeah.
yeah.
Did you work with Dan Auerbach on the your technical sophomore album? Was he involved in that as well?
Yeah, he's produced all three of the full length releases.
Right on. What was working with him like? But I mean, because you did reference that you'd listened to his stuff early on. What was it like working it on your own stuff with him?
It was weird. I mean, pretty surreal. Um, I mean, I remember playing like um, and it was funny because it did kind of work in a weird way. Now that I look back, I actually didn't even think about this until now. But I used to play these 3 hour gigs at a place called Mama Goldberg's in Troy, Alabama. It's a sandwich place, and they were trying to have live music as sandwich places do.
Right.
And so I was playing there, and I used to just like I would do this for a while, where I would hear these stories about people um, randomly being discovered by like people, and I was like, what if so and so walked in? And I remember just being like, what if like at that time, like being 15, 16, just being like, what if you know that Black Keys were in heavy rotation at that point, and um, I was I would just like daydream while I was playing to like three people in the sandwich shop about like them coming in and being like, I need to sign you right now, like as if that's gonna happen. And then, but
That's
that is
amazing.
literally what happened. Perry Brown did come in, and it was before I knew Perry. Perry didn't know who I was, and the Fire Mountain came and sat down. I knew who they were, and I was playing, and I remember I played the guitar lick for I can't remember the name of it. It was a Vampire Weekend song. I was like, this indie rock band's gonna know uh, Vampire Weekend, and the lick was like Cape Cape Cod Quassa Quassa, that tune.
Yeah.
Da 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 da. I played that, and Perry like turned around. And was like, "Are you really gonna play that?" And I was like, "No, I don't really." And it was just Perry doesn't remember this at all, but I was like profiling him. I was like, "I bet this hipster's gonna know this song." And anyways, that eventually led to me, you know, that Perry was a huge part of eventually getting to Dan Auerbach. So
Wow,
um,
that's amazing that that came full circle like that.
yeah,
Ah,
but Dan is very easy to work with. I also have no frame of reference with what it's like to work with anyone, so it might be terrible.
that might change. And also, I believe that you don't have to lose an organ every time that you go into to meet with people to record something. I might have that wrong, but I'm pretty sure
I
from
don't
other
know, man.
accounts. I don't know. Hey, I might be talking on my ass here. And that
Disagree to agree. um, but Dan's not like a very hands-on producer, and unless he's like really like every time he's ever really been like forceful in terms of like no, like it really needs to like let's see this thing I'm hearing in my head. It's like not that often, but every time it's like really cool. And I can't think of any idea he didn't like. come up with in the moment where we didn't take it, and it was always a really good idea. And but otherwise, he just like I feel like 90% of why he's a good producer is because of how hopefully relaxed he's. I eventually was relaxed feeling. Maybe not the first record, but by the second and third. And but the musicians he he gets on for the session work and the fact that he did for the second and third record, he was like, I think we need Adrian, who's my longtime bass player. He's like, that might have had a little bit to do with his like number one call guy had died. But Dave Rowe, who was a fucking badass and was very kind to me, he was from Hawaii actually, and to bring this all full circle, he like one of his I think his first like serious gig was playing slap bass for Jerry Reed, electric bass, and that was like his first big gig, like moving from Hawaii to the mainland. And
So like it's like what, like Georgia or something? Where did he reside?
Jerry's from the South, but I'm not sure where. And
Still a huge leap
yeah, I mean,
from there
I'm
to
sure
there.
he was. I don't know what was going on in Hawaii at the time. I guess he was like a military kid, and
Sure.
but and then eventually he was Johnny Cash's last bass player.
Wow.
Was touring, and he had gotten the gig. Dave Rowe, he lied to Johnny Cash and told him that a friend lied for him. He was like, just tell him that I'm like the best upright player because Johnny wouldn't have electric bass. If he did, it was sparing. He always wanted the upright, and I don't even think Dave Rowe owned an upright at the time. And he had his friend recommend him. He was like, he's Jerry Reed's guy. He's great. And Johnny was like, oh, because if you were in Jerry Reed's band, you fucking played. And he did play, but he just didn't know how to play upright yet. And so he got the gig. And the first gig he plays, and like he said at the end of the gig, he like because I've played Adrian's upright, and like you don't hit the note with just one finger. Like most of those guys are hitting it with at least two or three because
Oh
it
yeah.
just like puts hellacious like what you
Marks
call
or
it.
calluses.
And he said at the end of the gig his fingers are just like cartoon swollen, like like bee sting on your head on a cartoon swollen. And also Johnny Cash like called him into the green room and was like, why'd you lie to me? And he was like, well, if you just give me a little while, I will be really good at this. And I really just needed the gig, and I didn't think I'd ever get the chance to play with you. And I just really, and Johnny was like, it was like a one-off show, so it was kind of lucky. He was like, all right, you go home and learn that thing and come back. You better know how to play it next time. And then he toured with him until he died.
Wow, that's amazing. But also thinking about it, being playing bass for Jerry Reed and his music, it's very difficult.
Jerry would play so much. I mean, not that I'm comparing. I was very heavily influenced by Jerry Reed, but Jerry would play a lot of stuff with bass notes in it. And to this day, Adrian will get mad at me if I'm incorporating. He's like, "You don't have to do that. Like, I'm doing that." Especially early on, he's like, "You," and I was like, "I don't think people are. It's hard to get away from." But Jerry would play differently depending on if he was playing with his, Baldwin classical by himself. It was he would have to like sometimes I guess he just stopped playing the bass note, but he knew how to play all of his songs in like six different ways. Like if his guitar player could, almost all of his songs had like guitar harmony in it, like two
Mm.
that he would track himself. And there's some videos of him just doing it by himself, and some where there's a guitar player who can keep up with him. But Yeah, I think the hot seat was being hired by Jerry Reed to be the guitar player, because it was just like, he has to do his Jerry Reed thing and sing the songs, but he sometimes he'll turn his volume down on his guitar and put his hands behind his and do like a sassy thing. But when he really plays, he's you know the best guitar player in the room. Um, so I think it was Johnny never really had players. You know, they didn't have to be. So
Yeah.
it was a very different type of. I mean, they were holding back, I'm sure, but they were. You didn't have to go out there, and you could have a pretty rudimentary understanding of your instrument and go tour with Johnny Cash.
Yeah.
Um, but you could not do that with Jerry Reed.
No, for sure. I mean, all of his picking styles and whatnot. You ever hear that story about? I think it was like Elvis's producer or something like that. He was recalling a story. I could have that wrong, but somebody was retelling a story that Elvis wanted to cover Guitar Man, and gu-
Yeah,
Elvis's guitarist just couldn't get it right. He's like, "Well, just call Jerry Reed in here." And
he also because he had written that song, um, and I think Elvis was trying to be. I don't even know if it was Elvis. It may have been Tom Hanks. Can't remember the actual guy's name,
yeah,
but
Colonel whatever. Well, yeah, Colonel Hanks, we'll say.
he was being a pretty shrewd businessman and was trying to like get all the songwriting credits for that tune. And I don't know if Jerry had just not recorded it yet. Surely it had been recorded because I mean there was a reference point to getting the guitar to sound like the original. So, but yeah, and Jerry like was like, I'm not gonna do this unless you give me full, or maybe it was like 80-20. But yeah, Jerry made a lot of money just from that tune. I think he probably could have just only released that song and been fine the rest of his life.
Right. Oh, that's yeah. And Jerry Reed's great. Amos Moses is also just like another
Yeah,
weird timing thing.
that one's tough. I'm trying to incorporate that. I'm not good at covers. I don't do a lot of covers, but that's one I've been trying to figure out. And it's very hard to play that and sing at the same time.
Oh yeah. Let me ask you this. When you started working with Easy Eye, did working with a big label like that kind of affect the way that you went about recording these last what two or three technically albums within three, I guess now, right? With Medium Raw?
Yeah. Um, the way I recorded before that was like, no producer. I mean, it was with with for the most part, someone that would not tell me that it's not okay to take 30 takes and just to have like, didn't know me well enough to be like, the first take was just as good as the third, stuff like that. So that was pretty weird to me because it's maybe the most takes I've ever done with within an Easy Eye. It's probably like one where I'm just acoustic and there's not a lot of people there that I can waste their time. It's just like Alan in in the control room, and I'll probably have way too many takes, 7 or 8. But it's usually 2 or 3. Sometimes we keep the first take with the full band stuff. So that was really weird, and I hated that. But I think once enough time passes, you can like a mistake in the moment is really hard to swallow, but a mistake, like a couple months later, you can like wrap your head around why it isn't, ruining the song, if that makes sense.
Right, right. Um, yeah, and real quick, jumping back to the that producer role that Dan has played for a couple times for you, do you think that you would take that approach if you were producing an album?
I don't know. I think I would probably try to be a lot like him. I would want to be more of a producer in the way of like I think he is good at like letting the person like establish what they sound like on their own, and then because he's so good at hiring the folks in the room, they're such chameleons that they're going to adapt to making that person sound like themselves. But also, I think all of the stuff, I think I can tell when, like a blind test, if I had not heard it, I'd be like, I think this sounds like it was recorded at Easy Eye. It all has like a similar vibe where it like sounds very professional and produced, but it's also like there's no click track, there's no uh you know the BPM will greatly differ from start to finish in a song, and in the way that shit was recorded a long time ago. But yeah, I think I would love to do that someday, and I think I have learned a lot from him, and like because I've watched a lot of documentaries on like Sam Phillips or like uh um like in Muscle Shoals, like how they were kind of taskmasters in terms of like getting the take.
Yes. Yeah.
Uh, I think in a lot of the scenarios where that was happening, they probably could have kept the first take or the. I wonder that a lot, like how much between the first take and the keeper take in most scenarios makes any difference to how it's going to hit the listener versus what it means to the person recording it. Like,
Right. Right. Are you of the mindset that it gets more and more diluted each time, or is it, or are you of the mindset of that it gets more refined and you get closer to where you want it to be with each take?
I think it's somewhere in the middle. Like, when I am just a guitar player, like most recently, a couple weeks ago, I was just recording guitar for someone, and you'll find yourself if we're tracking, like we were tracking harmonica and guitar at the same time, and like I would want to do another take, or the harmonica player would want to do another take, and I would just be like, well, if he's going to do one, I'm going to do one, and then it's like you're doing it because you're. In my case, I was doing it just in case something happened, and once you get to the point where, like these guys, for the most part, they had the form and they're reading from the chart. They're not making mistakes, but they're maybe not playing it as they want to play it. When I am hired as a guitar player, like I'm just gonna actually fuck up, and it's gonna be like, no, I really need to fix that. That happened like I can count on one hand how many times that happened at Easy Eye with a session musician. But yeah, I think it's a lot of fun to have a lot of takes, but it's probably there's just there's a sweet spot I think within the usually the second and like fifth take. If you don't have it, you're not gonna get it. Like
Mm,
there's no point in going past five unless you're playing jazz, something insanely. If you're playing like a three chord song and you're me hired as a guitar player and I can't get it within three takes, then you should hire someone else. But
do you like to kind of step away from your stuff and be a hired gun in those kind of scenarios as well? Do you enjoy doing that?
yeah, I love it. I mean, my the happiest I am is when I'm just a guitar player. Um, and I got to do that recently with Riley Downing of the Deslons, and that was a lot of fun being able to play guitar just because I still I don't know. I think it's funny because I probably was like more worried about that set than I am for my own, just because I know my own songs better. But
Yeah.
I certainly have a lot of fun um, as a guitar player, just because it's like I think I just think you simply can if you are only having to do one thing. I think I'm going to do it better. Um,
Right. Right. I think I heard somebody talking about Hank Williams' songwriting process, and he's like, if it's not there within like the first 5 minutes, it's not worth writing down or something along those lines. How do you feel about that? Do you think that, I mean, I think that he was obviously exaggerating, but do you think that quickness is a thing to really grab hold of when it comes to formulating ideas?
Maybe for some people, I think Bob Dylan was the one who said that, and um,
All right, then I don't agree with that. I don't like any
yeah,
of that stuff.
he was. I think maybe for him, I think it depends on like I personally, and I got a lot of that from Ryan Saab, who would be like, yes, I mean, I think it's like in both ways, it's good because like someone will come up to you and be like, you're so talented, and it's like, no, I was just too dumb not to do something that would yield immediate results, like going to school or like getting a job on the pipeline. And I think it, but I also sometimes think that's just like a defense mechanism for someone who like, a lot of the times it'll be someone who, in my experience, is like well off, a dentist or a doctor, and they're like, you're just built different. Like it's so awesome that you're able to do this, and it's always funny because they're like weirdly envious, and I'm like, you know, I think the grass is always greener, but
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
it it's not that I would want to be a doctor. I wouldn't mind the doctor money, but
The
I don't.
stability of the thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and but I wouldn't even know what to do with the doctor money. I'd probably just get a lot of surgeries. But
No, you could afford them. You might do it yourself though, really, realistically. And with all these organ, transplants in and out of your body, like you already have the experience.
I'd still be in the music business. Yeah,
But yeah, so let's just say that you kind of are a doctor though. Kind of.
yeah,
Yeah.
I am.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, Dr. Seuss. But I will work on a song for years before I release it, or we'll get when because I had never co-written a song until I met Dan, and so when it got time to go write, it's like, wow, these people, you hear about it and you're like, these people are writing songs, and it gets a bit formulaic in Nashville. I'm not saying with Dan per se. I'm just saying like, you know,
In
it
general.
it was AI before AI, you know. Um, and I think it is okay for these pop country songs to be written by robots, personally. But
And that's coming from a doctor.
but no, I will, you know, definitely suffer with a song before I for as long as I deem it necessary. And when we were writing, we would get the bones of a song, and then in a lot of cases, in almost every case, I would just go home and rewrite what we had, but keep the bones for the most part, keep the melody, and then I would just sometimes people wouldn't even notice. They'd be like, "Wow, we really wrote a great song." I'm just kidding, but that I was like that was what happened big time with I was really to the point where I was worried about it with that Sierra Farrell song that like Sierra, Dan, and I wrote that Low Down Lonesome song, and they were both going so fast, and I had never writ like I have to sit for like a long amount of time, and I can't write very quickly. Sometimes I can, but it's like very few and far between.
Right. That
Then
that,
I,
that
I
wasn't a
went,
muscle that you were
yeah,
flexing. Yeah.
yeah, and we like I barely got a word in edgewise. Not that I was being ignored, but it was just like this is done. Like this is already the bones of a good song. And Sierra already had the chorus, and so we were just writing verses. And and then I went home and like really went over the words a lot to the point where I was like, they're probably gonna be like, what is this? Why did you just change like all of the words except for the chorus? And but they didn't. So sometimes I'm just like, yeah, the words don't matter to a lot of people, but the words mattered a lot to me. So
Yeah, are you oh, and by the way, we'll take this time now. Congratulations to Sierra for winning all those Grammys. It's amazing. With writing and stuff with other people and whatnot. Um, do you enjoy that process of like, let me see whatever they're bringing to the table and let's see how this reacts to what I'm bringing? Or is that kind of like a toss up? You're like, I don't know how this is gonna go down, but we'll see.
yeah, I think like depending on sometimes you can tell someone's excited to be there. Um, Sometimes you can tell like that the person gets where you're coming from, or sometimes you don't know who you're writing for. You're like you'll, especially during COVID, like the lockdown thing. I was that was like the only consistent thing you could do was Zoom calls and Zoom writings, and sometimes you could just tell like people were agreeing to them and because it was all you could do to be creative in a lot of ways. And so I did a lot of them where it was like, does this, you know, I don't think either of us knew why we were there. And sometimes that led to interesting things because it was like, because there was no formality, it led to, um, a certain level of just like the, you know, uh, everybody was comfortable because there was no intention from the beginning. And then sometimes it was like this person is phoning it in. Sometimes maybe it was me phoning it in. It's really hard to I you know just like meet a person for the first time on your phone screen and have anything genuine happen.
Yeah,
I think
I couldn't believe that happening ever, not once, not ever. I mean, that's never happened to me, but yeah, I've never put
I
myself in that
think
situation.
better at it. I think it's probably not supposed to be that way. Like I don't think our brains are supposed to get good at staring at a little thing in our hand and being like, "Yeah, you're just a little guy. I'm holding you. This isn't great." That I just
For
feel like I
for, for the record, I am
pick
a little
you up,
just a little guy being held.
yeah,
Yeah.
pick you up, and no, I get to talk. I'm holding you, but
Yes, I am a light little guy, and James does get to pick me up because that is the rule of the podcast. Guests get to do what they wish.
sorry, that was me disrespecting you. I had to put you down.
I understand. I understand. I'm on a high horse over here. Yeah,
Yeah. To end that whole spiel, I think like just like anything, art is a weird term because it means that it's like different or more meaningful than someone else's work. And I think like I'm very lucky that I just get to be an idiot and make noises. The term artist gets thrown around a lot, and I think it's a job, and you have to work to get better at whatever you do for a living. So,
absolutely.
and I'm just lucky to be able to do it for a living. So,
That's awesome. Yeah, what was speaking of work, what was working on this newest release, Medium Raw, like for you? What was going in the studio and hashing that out like?
So we didn't do a studio this time. That was the weird thing. It was at a house called the Honky Chateau, which is an old house in Nashville, and just set up in a living room. And only had auxiliary percussion, Adrian on upright bass the whole time, and then me, and then Jeff Jeffrey Clemens came in on the last day, and we did some three-piece trio stuff. So it was weird, because it wasn't, you couldn't hear yourself. Like, I didn't have headphones on the entire time. Um, Jeffrey's drum kit was like two walls away from me. I couldn't see him. I could barely hear him. So there was a lot of like loss in translation of what beat I thought he was playing against what I was playing. Sometimes I would think he was playing in a halftime groove. And I think you can listen to it, and there is some like weird, I don't know what you would call it, like, because it all breaks down into math. So it was like I was playing, he was playing halftime, but it still fits over the fact that I'm playing a train beat and he's playing a halftime groove. But he's weird. He's a great drummer. He's G Love's drummer, I guess
G
is what he's famous for.
G Love.
G Love and the Special Sauce.
Oh, I'm not aware of them, but that's a cool name. I like it.
Yeah.
And they got a good drummer, I can tell you that. Yeah,
And
that's
now
that's that's awesome. Yeah, how'd you like the kind of changing of the atmosphere to be recording in a house as opposed to a traditional studio setting?
I didn't find out about it until the day of, like literally 15 minutes before I like was driving to Easy Eye Sound, and then called Alan to tell him I was actually going to be like 15 minutes late. And he was like, "Oh, no worries. We're not finished setting up at the house." And I was like, "The house?" He was like, "Oh, yeah, my bad. We're recording at this house." And so, yeah, I probably would have, like, probably would have freaked out about that if I'd known. I probably would have prepared in really weird ways that you can't. Um, I always feel like every time I've been in the studio, it feels like that dream where you like, it's at the end of the school year and they're like, "You never showed up for this class," and I was like, "I had straight A's." And then they're like, "You can take the final," as if that would happen. Like, they're like, "You can take the test." It was like, so that's what it feels like taking the test without ever showing up for the class
But then you ace it, right?
every time.
Yep. Of course. No, that's awesome. Um, yeah, it's a fantastic album. Do you have a personal favorite from Medium Raw?
Um, I like I Could Just Die Right Now. Um, that was that one just had just gotten finished. Like, I played that one live last night on the radio, and the host was like, "That doesn't sound like the like. Have you changed a lot of that?" And I was like, "Yeah, I guess I sing it pretty like a lot of these songs change from live to the from the
From recording to playing it to
yeah."
performing it live. Yeah, and those adjustments happen all the time, but was it abrasive, I guess, to the host?
No, they said it was prettier actually, which was nice, but the song had just, it had there was a couple of songs we recorded that there were some old songs on the record, and there's once like the song Steely Knives I think is close to 10 years old. But then I Could Just Die Right Now, Elevator Business. That one didn't make it on. We recorded 19 songs, and a lot of them were like finished that week or finished in the studio, and then some of them were just pretty hammered out. But I really like that one, and I like the I like how Ragdoll came out.
Yeah,
Um,
right on. Uh, wi will there be because I know that with I think it was Strange Time to Be Alive that there was the standard release and then there was a deluxe edition with some extra stuff on that deluxe edition. Will there be another addition to this new medium raw release?
we we've talked about it. I would definitely like this tune Elevator Business is like a song about the music business and kind of shitting on it or how it feels sometimes. And it has definitely gotten a lot better live in how we do it. Um, so like the recording on the record is just acoustic guitar and upright bass, and we play it as a trio now. But um, I hope that one makes it. I don't like how it sounds compared to how it sounds now, but I think it's cool. It would be cool for people to hear how it sounded when it. We had never played that one, me and Adrian, so pretty loosey goosey. But yeah, I mean, three or four, I would like to do the digital deluxe edition again. I think that's fun.
That's awesome. Yeah, in if people aren't super familiar with your work and are about to jump into your discography, where would you suggest that they start? What would be a good representation of starting here?
It's too late for them. I would just tell them not to.
Could we recommend somebody that they should be listening to then, perhaps?
Yeah.
Instead, can we say Bob Dylan or Hank 3?
Let's say Timothy Chalamet. Yeah, he's at he's right at the point where you want to tune into him.
Well, you're you're
Um,
you're good. You're really good homies with them, right? You guys hang out a lot
yeah,
and such.
yeah. I actually taught him how to be Bob Dylan.
I knew you were gonna say that. I knew you were gonna phrase it exactly that way, and that's what I was hoping for.
But no, I guess I think the EP is like if you want to know what the band sounds like live, I think this new record is actually a really good place to start in terms of because it is me, Adrian, and you know percussion, and that is how I tour is as a three piece, and or smaller. It never gets bigger. So like the first two records are pretty big in terms of production. By that I just mean how many instruments are in the room, and so. Um, And then I think the EP is fun. It's not very long. It's again just me and Adrian. So maybe listening to those two, you get to see about 8 years of development between the two, the newest record and the EP. I don't think it's 8 years. It's like 6 years.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. And I'm glad that we course corrected there at the end.
yeah,
Yeah, James, thank you so much for coming on here, man. I really, really appreciate it, dude.
yeah, man. Anytime, I'd love to do it again.
We're gonna do it tomorrow, so stay tuned for that. But before I let you go, we got to do some promo stuff here. So, Early James's new album, which you're just talking about, Medium Raw, is out now via Easy Eye Sound, and you can get the album through easyeyesound.com along with the other releases. There's two other releases on there, I believe,
Yeah.
and that'll be linked below, whatever you're listening to this on. And you could find all of the music streaming everywhere, wherever people get their music, that's where they could find
Mm,
you. Yeah,
yep.
they just can't escape at this point.
No,
It's gonna be coming through the speakers.
it's really an issue. We can talk about that next time.
Yeah, and we'll be addressing that tomorrow. Yeah, wherever you get your music, that's where you could find it. And the merch is available through your website at earlyjames.com, which will also be linked below. And people could stay up to date with news and shows and tours and all that good stuff by following you on Instagram, right? That's the best place.
That's the easiest. And you can get merch from easyisound.com as well.
Right on. Both of those links will be linked below. So you choose. And the Bandcamp, is it just at earlyjames.bandcamp.com or at early James and the latest at
Hmm.
bandcamp.com?
Yeah, that should show up, and that's the you can buy the EP for $5.
That's a great deal for a great album. And again, that will be linked below as well. And the Instagram, again, that's at Early James and the latest on Instagram to keep up to date with news and shows and tours and all this good stuff. And you do have a tour coming up in March, right?
We're actually about to start the first leg of this tour on the 7th. We'll play
Okay.
here in Birmingham and Nashville on the 8th, and basically going up to New York City and swinging around, coming back down.
Are you
Um,
heading west and then around again?
mm,
And that's the medium raw tour.
Heading north and then west in the background. But yeah,
So from
yeah, that's the first
Birmingham
leg.
to Australia, Pittsburgh.
Yeah,
No, you're hitting a lot of stops and a lot of people live around these places. So if he's coming around, if Early James is heading out, please go see him. Medium Raw tour starts, and this is coming out on Friday. So is it is it the 8th on Friday? Does that sound right?
7th. Yeah, that'll be the first show of the tour here in Birmingham.
Cool. Okay, so if you're in the Birmingham area, head out to the show. Where is it? Where's the event? What's the venue?
It's at Saturn in Avondale.
Perfect. So, oh, and we'll say this as well. If you can't make it to a show for whatever reason, like maybe you're not close enough to drive to it, be sure to buy tickets to it anyways,
Yeah,
even if you can't show
it's
up.
it's
Yeah.
surprising sometimes because it seems like people do that. You'll show up to a show. I mean this like I'm like that's a lot of people. Not it's like over 20 people who bought tickets and they don't show up, especially during like that first year of like after COVID where we were like, yeah, let's go on tour. And like, maybe less than 50% of the population was willing to leave their household. But it seemed like in some cases people were just buying tickets to be nice.
Well, that's awesome. So let's keep that tradition alive. This is going to be a good tour. We're going to sell lots of merch, make a lot of money, and ultimately not even to
Sell
please
out.
Dan. It's a sellout, but also Patrick. We gotta help Patrick Carney.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he'll be happy. We're trying to appease him, so help us appease him.
Yeah, I'm hoping he starts a label and that I eventually do a record with him. That I never
But
want to leave the Black Keys.
yeah, yeah. That you're in the orbit, you stay in the orbit. I think that's kind of the rule.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah,
Eventually, Michelle Branch.
in due time.
Yeah.
Yeah, Medium Raw is out now. Please go get it. And the Medium Raw tour starts tomorrow if you're listening to this the day that this releases. And do we have anything else to promote, James? Is that it?
Oh, Milo's teas, very good.
Hey, heck of a brand. Heck of a
Yeah,
brand. Yeah, and they are sponsoring the tour, I believe, right?
I hope so.
Okay. Shout out to Milos. Thank you, James. I'm going to stop recording this. Talk to you in a minute, okay?
Heck yeah.
All right. Thank you, sir.